Hi there. My name is Lina Forrester, and I am a professional scribbler located in a town at somewhat pretty much the heart of the USA. I was actually born in Spain. I am an Air Force brat, and so we did some traveling until I was about 3 years old, and then we put our roots down here in Missouri, and I have been here ever since. All of my life, or at least as far back as I can remember, I have been doodling. I would just cover my worksheets and notes with doodles and scribbles and mark making throughout school. So grade school, middle school, high school, and even college. It just, everything was covered in all these different marks and scribbles and doodles and drawings and you name it. And I believe it's because it helped me focus, especially if the teacher was talking for long periods of time. It kind of gave my brain something to do so that I could listen to the teacher. And nowadays I do it for fun and I do it as a career. But I didn't start out as an intuitive artist. Actually, I have been immersed in a variety of different art forms, from photography to wanting to become an author. I spent my entire 20s wanting to be an author, and then when my daughter was born, I resorted to I went back to that doodling and the scribbling to kind of help me process motherhood. And these were still just things that I did in the background. I just considered them to be sketches. And a lot of them actually ended up being figurative drawings. And so it never really occurred to me that I was improvising, but I was. Almost everything that I drew or painted was improvised. I didn't know what I was going to paint or draw or whatever until it was pretty much done. I also I got real big on Zen tangling, Zen doodling around that time. I was like really immersed in all the patterns, and I had a lot of fun with that, but I was still doing a lot of figurative stuff. And then when I decided to start doing this as a career, I was still in that more illustrative mentality. I did a lot of animal portraits, portraits of woodland animals, especially like bunnies and deer, because that's the kind of environment I grew up around. I grew up with the woods all around me, and we had deer and we had rabbits and we had birds, and I would always be drawing these animals with the idea that they would be surrounded in just different patterns and different marks, and their clothing would have different marks and patterns that I really enjoyed. But I wasn't feeling like I was being entirely truthful to myself and to the world. And so I started saying, well, I want my work to grow up a little. And so I started painting instead, and I was painting these really elaborate layered landscapes, and still it hadn't occurred to me that I was working on the fly. I was improvising. I had no idea what I was going to be doing until it was finished, and the whole fun of it for me was the actual making it itself. I did finally learn a few years ago about the term intuitive art. I learned about its origins. I really dove right into the subject. It was almost like someone was saying, you can do this. This is okay. I know you scribble and doodle in the background, and that's your art. That's who you are. You need to be showing that, and I'm giving you permission to do so. So I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the types of marks I make. I spent just so much time researching the subject, but also researching my previous sketchbooks, looking through them all, determining maybe why I made certain marks that I did. I've noticed that growing up here in Missouri with all the caves and the karst topography out here has really influenced a lot of my marks. A lot of my work still kind of becomes a landscape. Even the really, really scribbly ones, they're still somewhat of a landscape, and there's different elements to it. And I think that's just because I grew up immersed in the woods, going through creeks, looking for arrowheads, finding crawdads. I was a barefoot Missouri kid that was always filthy and climbing trees. And even today when we go hiking, it's just, I am so incredibly fascinated by all of the different textures of rocks, the cliff sides. There's just so much here to take in. But it wasn't just my environment that kind of shaped my art and the type of marks that I make. It's also about me needing a visual interpretation of how I'm feeling at that moment, and maybe how I am reacting to certain experiences that are going on in my life or in the world in general. If there's a really big worldly event, I will be scribbling because I just have so much going on in my head that I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is that I'm actually feeling. And so a lot of times I will scribble out several pieces in a row to kind of get all that clutter out. And it kind of shows me in general, shows me this is how you're feeling. And you might sometimes see how it gets calmer and calmer as I go through the scribbles, because I am coping at the same time. I think all of this stems from my struggles with ADHD and anxiety. I am going to be totally open about mental health here, because I believe my mental health has been a major influence in the fact that I not only went to school for psychology, but that I also now teach how to scribble. I teach lots of scribbling classes. I do an intuitive art class every other week, because I want others to have this same kind of outlet if it works for them. And I want others to be able to help, to be able to know themselves as well, and to maybe, if they need that visual interpretation of what's going on in their heads, or if they just need to find a way to loosen up, or whatever the reason is. I love teaching this, that it's okay to scribble, that it's okay to go back to being a child again and holding your crayon in the wrong hand and just having fun. I tend to be influenced by a lot of people, but some of the big major ones are Van Gogh. He is like my spirit animal. I'm also a big Mark Twain fan, and that's probably because I live in Missouri, where he was born. Some artists of today that I am very much inspired and influenced by are Heather Day, Marie Noel Worm, and JWG on Instagram. His name is Jonathan Gemmel. I hope I said that right. Laura Horn is another really good inspiration, really big inspiration for me. Recording this around Christmas time, I'm not really focusing on a lot right now. The only thing that I am in need of working on is some video classes for my patrons, and so that I can take the rest of the month off. But in January, I hope to get back on track with a bunch of scribbling, and I really want to start a Scribble 365, and I think it would be fun to get as many people as I can on board with that. So I'm going to do probably a smaller scribble each day and just kind of see how they change throughout the year as life comes at me. The biggest challenge of being an artist is probably the fact that I work from home. I'm always in my house, so I'm always surrounded by all the things that need to get done. And it sometimes is hard for me to separate the two between work and regular life. So I've had to make sure that I have a pretty good schedule of certain brackets of time on when I work on this, when I work on marketing, when I work on extra things, or when I'm working on painting, and just when I'm done overall. So once my daughter's home for the day, I'm done. I put away all of my things and I am officially off work. So those are just some of the things that I have to do to kind of force myself to find that separation between the two. Advice I would give to my younger self would probably fall on deaf ears. Younger Lina really wanted to be an author. Both of my parents are published authors, and I have what my mom calls the curse to write. I just love writing, but I learned at around 30-ish that writing was doing nothing for me. I was living inside of a world that did not exist. And I have problems with hyperfocus, and sometimes it would be all I could think about was my work, was my book. And I think I would tell young Lina, like, hey, I know you like to write, and it's totally okay to write. You don't have to write for other people, and you don't have to write in order to be published, but try to pursue art instead, because you find a way to get those feelings out that you do with writing, but you will get them out in a more efficient and effective way, and you'll be able to go outside and go for hikes and go hang out with your family and go do all kinds of things without being stuck in work mode. I would also tell her that there's no shame in therapy and medication, and to go get herself diagnosed with ADHD ASAP. Because once she knows that that's what's going on in her brain, she can start to forgive herself for a lot of her past, a lot of her childhood, and for a lot of the mistakes that she makes currently. And then I would give her a whole box of gouache and colored pencils and Copic markers and graphite pencils and charcoals, and just tell her, go nuts. While I'm working, I do like to listen to music. If I am having a pretty cluttered brain day where my head is just filled with too much, I will work in complete silence, because the music will just be, it's almost like trying to listen to an acoustic guitar in a extremely crowded room full of talking people. And so I will occasionally listen to absolutely nothing. And other times I'm able to be so focused that I can have the TV going and just having a show or a movie on while I do my artwork. So it really just depends on the day. But most of the time it is music. But music and external noises aside, that's kind of how I run my entire practice. I go with my flow. I go with how I'm feeling at that moment of that day. Everything for me is kind of present. What is happening right at this very second? What color am I right now? What color is the world right now? And then I just kind of let myself go. And I doodle and I scribble and I make all kinds of cool little marks. And then when I'm finished, sometimes I will write down in my separate journal what was going on in my life. That way, sometime in the future, I can see a correlation between marks and what was going on. And I mean, I've seen it before. I've seen little marks pop up and have gone through previous sketchbooks and seen the same mark pop up and found that the same things were going through my head at the same time, even though they were completely different times of my life. And so it's really fascinating to see that, and that's how I know that I did it right, So with all that being said, this means that I've definitely tried some unconventional things. I've used watercolor in ways that I'm not sure it should be used. I have finger painted with ink. I have taken sticks and leaves to gouache and put them on the paper. I have just done whatever I can think of. I've made paintings with rain where I would paint and then I would put it out in the rain to see what it would look like after it was finished. Any kind of experiment I can think of, I will definitely go give it a try, because for me, art is fun. Art is about enjoying yourself and enjoying the process and just having a blast. And so any chance that I can get to try something new and really have a lot of fun, I'm gonna go for it. My favorite reaction from people who see my art online or see my scribbles on reels is that I have inspired them to take their pencils and pens out after years of having put them away because they felt they weren't good enough. And I just absolutely love that people are dusting off their materials to get to scribbling, because I have shown them that it is okay to make art that looks like a child did it, because it's about the fun and not about the end product. And this is why I encourage so many people to keep a wordless diary, which is essentially a diary, but is filled with scribbles. Instead of writing everything out that's going on in your life, you scribble. And that's a really, really great reference for your own self, your own identity. So if you're having a lot of trouble with that, or if you're just having a lot of trouble interpreting your emotions, or if you're just having a lot of trouble feeling so many different feelings, I really encourage you to try that, to try a wordless diary and scribble something out each day and then make it note in a separate journal, like certain things that were happening to you that day, what you were feeling, what maybe shows you've been watching. I have learned some very interesting things that have influenced marks later on when I would go look and I'd say, oh my gosh, I see it. I see what was going on with me at that time. Another thing that I really want people to take from my art is whatever it is that they personally take from my art. I want whatever you're looking at to speak to you in your own very personal way. My artwork has its own meanings for me. It has its own reasons for being the way it is and for the colors that it is. But everybody is completely different, and we've all had our own different experiences. And I've had some people see things that were completely different than I had ever imagined that this work would look like. And I love that so much. I love when my work looks like so many different things to so many different people. So don't try to look at my art and say, well, what is it? That's not for me to tell you. You have to tell me. You look at it and say, I know what this is. I know what this is about, because this is what it's about for me. One final thing that I would like people to take away from my artwork, not even just my artwork, but watching me make my artwork on Instagram Reels and such, is the optimism that's involved in my work. Sometimes I am working from a place of deep hurt or anger, or I've been watching the news too much and I've lost all faith in humanity, or like during the lockdown. When I finally caught COVID last year, and I decided I would do a series of scribbles called Fever Dreams, just to see how the scribbles would look during COVID versus when I'm healthy. And these are just little things, almost like the theme behind all of that is the playfulness, the hope, the optimism, that there is a little bit of glimmer in each piece, no matter how deep, no matter how dark, no matter how hard of a place it came from. There's still a little bit of just a little bit of optimism in there. It could be in the flourish of how I scribbled something out. It could be in a simple color that I added at the very end. I just really hope that maybe if you're in a dark place right now, that if you can't bring it to yourself, bring yourself to scribble on your own, that I hope you will watch some of my scribbling and know that you're not alone, and that it's okay to let go, and that you can only go up from here. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me. I feel like I've left a lot out, but I suppose we always feel that way, right? If you would like to follow me, I'm on Instagram under Lina Forrester, LinaForrester, and that's my handle for pretty much everything. So Facebook, Twitter, well, X, I guess as you call it, YouTube. I'm on all of those other platforms, but I'm mostly active on Instagram. And if you would like to have some scribble classes, or join my scribble club, or even just have like weekly tutorials, or would just like to support me, you can head on over to my Patreon. Again, same handle, and you can pick a subscription from there. I really, really hope that I get to see some of your doodles in the future. Happy scribbling!